Saito and I had safely returned back to our base.
Oh, there you are, Saito. And Yukimura's with you as well. Were you out for long?
Oh, Shimada welcomed us back warmly, but I wasn't sure how to answer his question discreetly. Also, it's weird. I got so used to Shimada's short hair, seeing him with the longer hair is taking me a little bit of like, oh yeah, I forgot you had long hair.
There was business Yukimura saw fit to attend, and I acted as her escort. I hear commotion. Has something occurred? Oh, Chief Kondo had returned.
Kondo? Really?
Indeed. It seems like an assembly is going to be gathered very soon, so keep sharp. Very well. Understood. Hurry, Yukimura. Neither the chief nor the commander need to wait on our behalf.
He covered for me. Okay, so you're not so mad at me. That's good. In the meeting room, Kondo, Hijikata, and the rest of the Shinsengumi captains had already gathered.
Alright, this is everyone. Let us begin this meeting. Now, as I am sure many of you are wondering, we are set to mobilize against the Imperial Army. Our next orders are taking us to Kofu. We are going to storm Kofu Castle. Toshi, explain it to them.
Our reasons for heading to Kofu is telling those Imperial Army bastards where Lord Yoshinobu's allegiance is. And we're gonna take back Kofu, and hold it from anyone stupid enough to get in our way. From the front, at least.
But first and foremost, we are going to reclaim Kofu Castle by flushing out all those Imperial forces. To make the stakes higher, if we're successful, then we can keep Kofu Castle for ourselves. We have no choice but to give it our all. Oh, and there is something else that I must bring to your attention as well.
Kondo crossed his arms, gazing around the room in proud awe at each of his men. It was clear that he was building anticipation, ever the master showman. I cherished the times when Kondo would show his more youthful, excitable side. Single tear.
Come on, what is it? Don't leave us hanging, will you come out with it already? Always so impatient, Nagakura. With that attitude, I do not know how you'll make it working in a castle.
Kondo chuckled at his own remark before clearing his throat to resume his more official tone.
I am proud to say that, with this mission, I have been promoted to the title of Executive Lieutenant Minister, which means that I am now a daimyo. On top of that, I have been given a new name, Tsuyoshi Okubo. What do all of you think? Rather befitting for a warrior, wouldn't you say?
Huh. Congrats. Kondo blushed bright red with glee, and I had never seen him so enthusiastic before, but none of the other captains, Nagakura especially, seemed to share his enthusiasm. Come on, guys. It's Kondo. He got his dream. He's gonna die soon.
Oh.
Surprisingly, all of them looked dejected, as if they were given something bitter to eat.
So, fellas, all of you start preparing to leave for Kofu as soon as possible. How well we do out there will reflect my evaluation with the shogunate. I have nothing but high hopes for each and every one of you. Alright, you are dismissed.
As soon as the assembly finished, Kondo walked with a spring in his step, whistling as he exited the room. Is he deliberately not picking up on the mood, or is he not picking up on the mood? Wow, Kondo sure is elated to have been given such an honorable promotion. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen Kondo that happy before.
Kondo began in a small dojo, so it is only natural to express elation when your efforts are recognized and are promoted thusly.
So if we win this battle, Kondo mentioned that we could keep Kofu Castle. So if that were to happen, then it would mean you and the other captains would start working within the castle, right? It was hard to imagine for a person like me, who had been born into civilian life, but for a reason I couldn't place, Saito felt less than thrilled about this prospect, and I felt bad.
Castle seems rather ambitious, for me. My skill is in the gift of taking life.
Right. After saying that, Sayato's eyes thinned and he gazed towards the sky, which was empty of stars. Not to mention your inside. Thinking about it then, I wondered how Saito himself came to join the Shinsengumi. I had been working with him for so long, and I realized I barely know who he is. But if I were to make the effort in asking him, then I'm sure he wouldn't have given a straight answer.
Man, what the hell is Kondo thinking? I don't remember signing up to become his servant.
Dang.
Daimyo, or whatever it's called, he needs to chill out. If this were 30 or 40 years ago, it'd be one thing, but to get promoted from the current shogunate...
Neither Nagakura nor Harada seemed excited by Kondo's news. Saito, I had noticed, seemed fixed on the two of them as they ranted, wearing his usual expressionless gaze. War was about to erupt. I prayed that everyone would return safely.
Indeed.
Right. There's trouble brewing. Chapter 2 already. Alright. Chapter 1 was crazy. That was too much of an escalation for me. And now before we begin, I must check this. Middle corruption, and we're budding. Okay. Good. Springtime brought with it the bloom of new life. The Shinsengumi had renamed themselves as the Koyu Regulatory Company and departed from Edo. Sanan and Heisuke decided to stay behind in Edo, along with what remained of the Fury Corps. My first assumption was that I would remain behind with them, but for some reason, Hijikata saw fit to command me to march beside the Koyu Regulatory Company. Thanks, old boo. Saito was assigned to watch over me, making this experience altogether not much different than how things had been while we were in Edo. There was one rather large change, however, which was... ... Hey! New outfits! Excellent. Good segue, Chizuru.
Man, who would have thought there'd ever be a day where I had to dress in Western clothes? Hijikata does have an eye for flair. I suppose it's easier to get around in this getup when there are bullets flying at you. Jeez, these are a pain in the ass to put on. Especially this thing right here. What is it? It's called a button? Had no idea how the hell to use it at first.
Looks like you gave up after 2 of them as well. After embarking from Edo, many of the men were given a new Western-style uniform to wear. I can't wait to hear what she has to say about Saito. I found them rather dashing, despite how form-fitting all of the accessories and garments were compared to Japanese clothing, but everyone had their doubts. Come on, Chizuru, they look dashing because they're form-fitting. Hey, Saito? How do those tight sleeves fit on you? Are they hard to move in? Ah, yes. Given the good old once-over.
Not particularly.
I think these clothes have buttons instead of sashes to fasten things together.
It appears so.
This had been my first opportunity to see Saito adorn his Western uniform, but I had to say he looked quite handsome. Indeed. He's a very handsome being. Of course, I was a little taken aback to see that he had cut inches off of his hair, but Saito, rather unsurprisingly, was difficult to read, and I wasn't sure if he was upset by it or not. Huh? Saito, I think you forgot to button those last 2 right there.
That is by design.
Maybe. But I think those 2 holes are there so that you can slip those last 2 buttons in. I think that you've missed a couple. Where? Hearing this, Saito quietly dropped his eyes to peek at the aforementioned buttons on his new coat. His cheeks flushed with color as he bit his lip. Where are these buttons? I must know!
I will tend to it later.
I'm so sorry. If it doesn't bother you, then don't worry about it. It's fine either way. Where are these buttons? Judging by his reaction, it seemed getting Saito to feel comfortable would be like pulling teeth. Now that I think about it, I haven't seen Kondo around recently. Did he not join our convoy?
I believe Chief Kondo is still in the Hino area.
A rural town located on the edge of Koshukaido, beside Bushu and Tama. It is a location where Hijikata was raised, and it is famous for its inn. Hino?
Bet you anything he's having a drink with the new recruits. Shit, what's going through his head? What is this to him? Are we marching into battle, or are we taking a mini vacation? Aw, come on. No need to be like that. I think it's been years since he's seen his wife or daughter. Give the guy a break. He deserves it. Look, I'm not giving him shit for having a drink. All I'm saying is maybe there's a time and place for everything.
That's rich coming from Nagakura. Nagakura's sour rant consequently made the move around his general vicinity lower, especially for some of the new members. I snuck a glance over at Saito, who was walking quietly beside me, his stride almost step for step with mine. Although he wouldn't have been one to express much, I noticed his brows locked in a furrowed position. There was something heavy on his mind. Always thinking, this boy. He never speaks out of turn. He's always, thinks very deeply about something before he says anything. Eventually, Hijikata loudly barked at the convoy to halt from the front, stopping to face us. You good, Yukimura? Figured you'd be a little tired about now. I'm fine, thank you. Hey, sorry for springing the order for you to join us so suddenly. Oh, I don't mind at all, but I wondered... Is it really okay for me to be marching out here with you guys? I mean, I'm just a little worried that I could be a distraction on the battlefield. Hijikata's expression turned glum. He seemed to stroke his chin absent-mindedly, lost in a deep thread of concentration. If possible, I would have preferred you to stay behind in Edo. But having you by yourself at the compounds would have been dangerous. Seemed like a better idea for me to bring you here, where I can watch you at least. Dangerous? Then Saito chimed in. Is it Sanan? Sharp as ever. That's right. Ah, so you brought me... Interesting. So, I'm just curious, when we do Sanan's route in future, are we gonna be ordered away from him? Is he gonna ignore those orders, or is he not gonna be as obsessed with us? It'd be interesting. Sharp as ever. That's right. He's been acting real weird lately. Seems like he's been scratching at the walls. Or maybe that Fury bullshit has finally gotten to him. I was unsure of what to say. I, too, had experienced suspicious interactions with Sanan that left me a little more uneasy than I would have liked. See, the thing is, I didn't want to leave you back at the compounds and then later come to realize I'd made a huge mistake. Tagging along with us might be a pain in the ass. But I figured it'd be for the best in your situation. Sorry for the headache. Oh, please don't worry about me. At first, Hijikata's sudden orders confused me, especially because I was certainly no warrior, but it appeared as though he had a lot to think about, which was understandable in his position. Commander, a minute of your time, please. What's up, Saito? Shinpachi and Sano appear displeased with our orders to attack Kofu, especially in regards to Chief Kondo's behavior. Hijikata gave a wry smile. Displeased? Maybe more like disgruntled. Yeah, I noticed it. I mean, I don't blame him. We're going to war, and Kondo spending his time drinking at inns probably isn't the most diplomatic move.
Thing is, though, in our current predicament, we don't have the luxury of men lining up around the corner willing to join us. Instead, we gotta use sake and cash to win them over.
What? In the past, I was somewhat ignorant of their recruiting methods, but are men who are more easily swayed by the promise of alcohol and money the kinds of men our leaders expected to fight tooth and nail for the Shinsengumi?
Please be honest. Do you believe we will be victorious, Commander? Well, if we can get inside that castle and fortify it, we'll be set. The castle? So if we are unable to penetrate it, then... You know, I'd seriously wish you'd give me something to smile about once in a while.
Dang. Poor Toshi. Why do you come to me with problems all the time, Saito? Gosh.
To answer your question, if we can't get inside, then it doesn't look too good. Although the shogunate leaders armed us with some guns and cannons this time around, they're nothing compared to the type of weapons the Satsuma and Choshu got. Do you anticipate our defeat, then? This is gonna be played pretty close to the chest for me, and I'll work my ass off. I don't want to put Kondo through the same thing as last time. Sad thing is, though, war gives every idiot with a weapon an opportunity to use it.
Hijikata turned his somber face to face the cumulus clouds bunching into clusters overhead. Then, after a deep sigh, he faced Saito and me.
There's no way I could let either Shinpachi or Harada hear this, but even I can't bring myself to tell anyone, A, there's no guarantee we'll win, but go ahead and risk your life for us.
This was the first time I'd ever seen Hijikata express a moment of vulnerability. It was so unlike him to admit that the odds were stacked against them. On top of this, how often had he found himself unable to show honesty to any of the captains, men that he spent many, many years fighting alongside? Saito was stoic, and he gazed back at Hijikata with the face of a docile servant.
Acknowledged. As usual, your skill in feigning the devil's advocate goes noticed. Yup, it's all in the duty.
Later, we were encamped just off the trail, and within the tent I laid awake restlessly. Well, with that sound going off. Hijikata's rather hopeless confession wouldn't stop stirring repeatedly in my head. From the corner of my eye, I saw Saito's sudden movement as he quietly exited the encampment. I wonder what's wrong. Did he have business to attend to? Although it would have been better for me to leave him be. I was concerned that it had something to do with his health or condition, so I went to follow him. Oh, hi.
Miss Yukimura, something wrong?
I'm worried about Saito. I'm going to make sure he's okay.
Perhaps it'd be better if you let him be. Maybe he's just going off to speak with the commander or something.
If that were the case, then I'd come right back. Do either of you mind keeping watch for me? With that, I ran after Saito. They tried to talk her out of it. Do they know something? Where did he go? Ah, there he is. Saito stood alone in the middle of an open patch in the forest, silently staring towards the clear sky. The stars glowed intensely, as if they were all on course to rain down upon him, and he stood mesmerized. He was as expressionless as ever, but his shoulders slumped below the twinkle of his melancholic eyes. A lonely display, I thought to myself. Just then... Ooh! I accidentally brushed a branch, rustling the leaves behind which I was hiding.
Who is there?
Saito's sharp voice cracked the silence.
You have until I count to 10 or else. I will slit your throat.
He must have thought I was an enemy soldier spying on him. His tone was biting, and I could hear his hand wrapped around his katana's hilt. Wait! It's me! At once I leapt from behind the shrub. When Saito had realized it was me, his expression became sullen.
Why have you left the camp? Have you forgotten what happened last time?
I'm sorry. It's just that I had a lot on my mind and I couldn't fall asleep. And then I saw you leaving the camp, so... Saito hadn't reacted one bit whatsoever, keeping his stoic eyes locked on me as I explained myself. I love that every 3 lines he's like, the stoic Saito, his stoic eyes, his stoic smile, the stoic outfit he wears. He's so stoic. Eventually, he just turned to look at the moon, gazing quietly at the soft, tender light. Why did you come here? Did you need some fresh air? Saito didn't respond. Instead, he continued to stare into the sky, and his eyes thinned as if the stars were shining too brightly. Surely Saito was consumed with thoughts that tightly coiled within his heart. I felt a little guilty for interrupting this moment of solace, but... So what do you think, Saito? About what Hijikata said earlier, I mean.
In what manner?
Well, if things go the way Hijikata predicted them to, then we might end up losing this time around, right?
Indeed, I assume. As he mentioned, the art of the sword is an archaic one. Our weapons are mere toys compared to those which are possessed by the Satsuma and Choshu. To further our embarrassment, the new recruits are quicker to the bottle than to the rifle.
Then why don't they find swordsmen?
Is your naivety so strong that you believe those who have killed before can walk freely in the streets, able to join our cause without retribution? Prowess in a dojo matters not. It is no simulation for a true battle. The only thing that matters is if you can kill when called upon.
Saito was right. It didn't matter how many men we recruited. Without actual experience on the battlefield, we may as well have been sending men to their graves. Having both Hijikata and Saito describe in great detail just how dire our situation was awoke within me a potent, depressive hopelessness. Aren't you scared, Saito? Entering the battlefield knowing that defeat could be likely? You might die. In my heart, I realized how futile this question might have sounded, especially to someone like Saito, who, on numerous occasions, came face to face with death. He was a man who, without a shred of doubt, accepted death as his companion a long time ago. It was a bravery that I could not fathom.
I do not fear death.
His answer, perhaps unsurprisingly, was delivered indifferently. The only thing he'll fear is the death of you, Chizuru, at the end of this. He doesn't fear his own death, he'll fear losing you. But he added something that I was not expecting.
What does bring me fear is losing sight of that in which I believe.
What you believe in? His words were so obscure that it was difficult for me to extract any kind of meaning from them. After a calm pause, Saito looked me in the eye, taking a deep breath before asking me a question.
Do you know the warrior's other name?
Other name? You mean like samurai? Saito shut his eyes and slowly shook his head.
Left side, because of the location in which warriors keep their swords. A samurai always walks to the left, no matter how narrow the street. Their katana is their soul, and it must never be touched by another person.
Huh? But you're... Saito kept his sword on the right side of his hips, and he always unsheathed with his left. After giving it a second of consideration, I don't think I've seen anyone other than Saito who kept their sword on the right side.
I was born left-handed. This quality made it challenging for me to join any dojo, and I received neither license nor kirikami.
A document signifying mastership of all disciplines within a particular martial art, awarded to a student by their master. And kirikami. There we go. A preliminary letter of military exemption. Its name comes from the tiny sliver of parchment onto which it is printed.
Any attempt I made to hold the bokken was met immediately with an order to correct my hand. Time and time again, I was told to change. However, those who dared to make such comments had never once defeated me in combat. I learned something. Names mean nothing on the battlefield. Your skill precedes reputation. Something neither sensei nor their assistants understood.
A secondary educator in martial arts classes who leads exercises rather than develops curriculum. It can also be a title given to a master teaching a specific pupil.
So, from whence does true strength come? A question I had pondered for years.
Saito muttered to himself nonchalantly. However, learning how much he had overcome told me just how much this question meant to him. For years? So, does that mean you found an answer? Saito fell silent. Without another word, he unsheathed his sword, and the cold, shimmering moonlight reflected off of the blade.
It is simple. With a blade, whoever wins is the strongest. Simple, but to the point. Our era of peace has continued for nearly 260 years, so this petty conflict between samurai is a rare one. Even so, it is within a true warrior's nature to have their sword at the ready. At least, I believed it to be so.
Saito's eyes glowed from the shine of the lit blade, but they still carried a thick darkness behind them. A tingling chill ran down the length of my spine.
However, it appears as though this belief is mine to hold alone. Long before the Shinsengumi had been formed, a certain Hatamoto's disciple saw fit to challenge me to a duel, and his life was put to an end.
What? A Hatamoto was one of the elites in our society. To kill one of them in a duel, I imagine, would have been a serious offense.
They offered the challenge, and I saw to it that their challenge was met. Despite my victory, however, I was charged with murder, and my samurai registry was revoked. Ironic, eh? Our purpose is to murder, and when such a purpose is put to the test, they brand us as criminals. Have you ever heard of such a contradiction? For many years, this was my burden to bear.
The weight that Saito put behind each utterance of warrior was so heavy, as though his life was formed and guided by those standards alone. I doubt, sadly, that I would be able to find many who would find themselves in agreement with him. Despite having an unparalleled talent, he had no one to validate said talent. A frustrating fact indeed. His tragic lack of support instigated him to rely on his own measures for both strength and honor for validation, which were tricky to navigate. For once, I caught a glimpse of the bitter loneliness that he had been nursing for most of his life.
The Shinsengumi men, however, victory meant slaying their opponents before they had an opportunity to strike. Quite similar to the kind of warrior I had idealized. Upon meeting them at Chie Hall, it was the first instance in which I had felt as though there were people who understood me.
Hearing Saito's story made me finally realize all that gave him strength and brought him strife. The Shinsengumi was the shelter and system of support that he had needed.
Amongst the Shinsengumi, either Soji or myself holds the distinction of having killed the most men.
Dang.
However, this distinction brings with it no respect, only contempt or disgust. How is one to garner any recognition if your skill goes undervalued? All my life, I had spent time sharpening my claws, only to find they were useless all along. I know this to be true better than anyone.
Saito rotated the blade to make his reflection visible, and he gazed longingly at himself. Taking a closer look at his sword, I realized that it was quite thinner than some of what the other men had. I suppose he sharpened his blade religiously, wearing it out in combat until it was of no use at all. If what he said about his amount of kills were true, then this must have happened dozens of times.
However, this claw in particular is a testament to my perseverance. I am undefeated on the battlefield, a distinction that seems to be all I have left.
When Saito drank the water of life, he said it was in order to protect me, but perhaps, more than that, he was afraid of confronting what defeat could mean to himself, which served in the greater interest of preserving his pride. So, this is what gave Saito the will to continue.
Times have changed, however. A gun is quicker to kill than any well-trained swordsman can. What it means to wield this sword. All that we have sacrificed and trained for has fallen victim at the behest of the new generation of warrior.
Saito bitterly bit into his lips, sheathing his sword back into its scabbard. For him, wielding the sword was the single most important honor any man could have. But the age of the blade was coming to its end. Beyond facing death or accepting the burden of becoming a fury, Saito's very way of life was threatened by the passage of time, an inevitable deluge of change beyond himself. That would make anyone nervous, but to Saito, it meant a total reevaluation to the truths he had held dear for the entirety of his life. What could I possibly say to him? I mean, like, wow, he just completely opened up to us. This guy doesn't say much most of the time, but when he talks, whew, he had a lot to say. I mean, after all that, how can you say, it's not like that? I mean, he's right. But, there's a but after, maybe you're right, but. Come on, Chizuru, hit me with that but. Maybe you're right. Maybe a time will come when warriors are no longer needed in our world. Even Hijikata admitted that the sheer range and power of a rifle puts us at a huge disadvantage against the Satsuma and Choshu. They were too advanced. My response seemed to sting Saito, and he glared angrily toward the empty space beside us. See? I knew my girl had a butt. But even if a time comes when samurai and katanas are no longer needed, that doesn't mean that you won't be needed too, Saito.
What are you saying?
His sour tone made me flinch a little, but I took a deep breath to articulate my position calmly. Okay, let's do this. Like you said, swords are for killing. Blood has been spilled on your hands, and certainly on your sword. But I disagree. Your sword also has the power to save lives. I, for one, am one of those who count themselves as lucky enough to have been saved by you. During the Battle of Tobufushimi, and from my father back in Edo. If you hadn't been there, I would have been killed. At the end of the day, my word came from someone who lived a relatively sheltered life of privilege. I was under constant protection. All the same, I hoped my words would do something to motivate and inspire Saito to retain his pride. Which is why I'm so very thankful for you, Saito. I appreciate you. No matter what happens in the world, even if it decides that it no longer needs the samurai, I will always need you. You saved my life. Aw, that was sweet. Saito's lips curled inquisitively, making it difficult for me to read how he was feeling. Once more, he turned away from me, staring into the darkness in contemplation. Maybe what I said was out of line, just as my anxiety began to flare. Saito stroked his soft, slender fingers against the side of my cheek. And she screamed, ah! Oh, wow, you are so beautiful! Dang. Who do you remind me of right now? You remind me of somebody. Shoot. That is going to bug me. If I ever figure out who you remind me of, I'm gonna post it in like a little flash on the screen of like, it was this character. Who do you remind me of, though? That's gonna bug me. I could see the gorgeous dazzle of stars in his dark, mysterious eyes, which were stoically fixed on my own. Stoic! Is something wrong, Saito? This gesture startled me initially, and I nervously asked him why, but he remained silent, offering no answer with his words as much as his body language. His eyes scanned me thoroughly, as if he were searching for something conspicuous, when finally he spoke breathily. Oh god, I'm not ready for this.
Your eyes, they are so sincere.
Huh?
Within them is no hint of deceit, as if your words are culled from the very essence of your soul. When I first visited Chie Hall and challenged each of their enrolled students, everyone who observed me and mentioned how strong I was had the same twinkling eyes as you do. I entered a period of reflection. Perhaps by keeping true to myself, I would eventually carve a reason to wield my sword thusly.
His voice was as quiet as always. However, I sensed a small sense of relief from him, and he was less tense than when I had found him. Seeing him relax made my heart feel warm. So, let's keep our faith in the Shinsengumi then. They're the ones who recognized your strength before anyone else did, a strength that even you yourself were unaware of. Even if, one day, you no longer needed your sword, then I am sure that none of them would even think of abandoning you. Sayato's eyes shot wide open in surprise. His mouth timidly formed into a slight curl, and he attempted an awkward but adorable smile. Stop my heart.
Yes. So simple, isn't it?
What? I wasn't sure what Saito was murmuring.
Many thanks, Yukimura. With your assistance, I can see that which had eluded me in the past. It is still unknown, but I see it.
Gratitude sounded strange coming from him, but there was no question that it was genuine. His hands lingered on my face a moment longer, and then he slowly drew them back.
Few men are willing to put their lives on the line these days, even when their shogun orders them to.
It was true. After all, the Supreme Commander himself had abandoned his troops at the first sign of trouble. And moreover, even the Hideyoshi daimyo and the Takagawa affiliate daimyo turned their backs on the shogunate. Vassals who were loyal to the Takagawa even before the Battle of Sekigahara, and Takagawa. There we go. Those who became feudal lords for being related to the Takagawa clan.
But at Toba-Fushimi, Shinpachi volunteered to lead the attack, knowing full well it could mean his death. Kondo returned to the front lines the very moment his injured shoulder had healed. And even now, Hijikata is preparing to wage war in the name of the shogun in the knowledge of his impending defeat. Neither Kondo nor Hijikata were born with the blood of samurai. But their souls, that is what makes them samurai.
Aww. I was wondering, I'm like, I didn't get that butterfly on moon. Did I pick a wrong option? But it was just like a very long lead up to that.
Perhaps it is the deeds that make a warrior. A way of life, not a position to be won.
His voice was unfettered by the monotone that usually characterized it so often in the past. I couldn't say for sure, but it seemed as though, just as Saito had hoped to convince me of his strength and reliability, he had also hoped to convince himself. For as long as I'd known him, I'd seen Saito as serious and single-minded, the sort of man who was steadfast in his convictions and his self-determined purpose. But now it seemed I was beginning to see the side of him that was, for lack of a better word, human.
Dawn approaches. We should return.
You're right. The insects chirped and hummed from the trees as we made our way back to camp. We were nearly there when I was wondering.
Oh!
Saito stopped suddenly, his face twisted with pain. Saito? What's wrong? I ran to him as he leaned heavily against a nearby tree, his fingers digging into the bark. His teeth ground aggressively and his breath was strangled. As I watched, he began to sweat. My stomach pitched as I realized what it was. Is it blood? Do you want blood? I give him blood? Saito, please, drink my blood.
I don't need it. It will pass.
However, Sayato's face warped in pain, and his forehead was covered in thick beads of sweat. That made it even more clear that he was craving blood. Please, I'll be fine! There was no point in arguing. I unsheathed my sword, and I slid the cold edge against my finger, feeling a burn as the flesh split open. Well, he was easily swayed.
Give that to me.
No, if you don't, you'll... I was sure he simply meant to take the sword away from me.
Alcott, give it to me.
That wasn't what I expected to hear. I'm so curious. What is Sayato's kink? And like, all the time, like, so what is it gonna be? He took hold of my Kodachi and stepped closer. I could hear his breath rattling in his chest. The blade pressed against my ear? Interesting. He must have wanted to cut where it would barely be visible. I felt a spark of pain as it broke the skin, and then his face moved so close to mine. Ear kink, pass it on. Sayato's got an ear kink, pass it on. I could feel his breath on my ear. His lips pressed against my skin. Yeah, I shivered as his breath touched my ears. That would definitely give me the goosebumps. Saito stopped and pulled away.
Does it hurt?
His voice was barely above a whisper, but it sounded loud in my ear. I'm fine. It just tickled a little bit. He seemed relieved to hear that, and I felt his tongue touch my ear once again. Oh gosh, I'm getting goosebumps just reading it. He was sipping the blood that was dripping from my ear. Well, I hope you wash your ears, Chizuru. As he drank, Sayato's breathing eased, and his shaking began to subside. After some time, he slowly stepped back.
I apologize.
His face was still pale, but at least the color was beginning to return. Don't worry about it. This will heal up in no time.
Drinking blood from the person you're supposed to protect. Cart before the horse, eh? Huh.
He gave a short bark of laughter. No, it's not like that. I mean, if you think about it, it's my fault you became a Fury in the first place.
No. If I had been strong enough to defeat Cosma, then this never would have happened.
He stood there silently for a moment, his back to me.
We should go back. The rest of the men will be getting up soon.
I nodded back to Saito and we returned to our camp.